Let's get to your top story, and that's top foreign policy aides in the Trump administration plan to meet with Russian officials in Saudi Arabia this week to discuss a path to ending the war in Ukraine. The first substantial talks between the superpowers on the conflict. The meeting would come less than a week after President Trump spoke on the phone with Vladimir Putin. Trump told reporters afterwards that the talks on ending Russia's war in Ukraine would take place in Saudi Arabia. The meeting will most likely draw criticism from some top Ukrainian officials because Ukraine hasn't been invited to these talks that are going to be taking place between the United States and Russia. President Zelensky of Ukraine has said that his country must be involved in any talks over its own fate. Now, a statement he made after learning that phone call that took place between Trump and Putin that lasted for an hour and a half. Now, Ukraine officials are fearing that Trump could try to reach a deal with the Russians that would not have strong security guarantees or viable terms for any enduring peace as far as Ukraine is concerned. Some reports have also suggested that Kyiv has not been invited, and that is what's really going to cause some trouble. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president and first lady have arrived in Abu Dhabi for an official visit. They were welcomed by the UAE Minister of State for International Cooperation. The key agenda would be securing the release of more Ukrainians held in Russian captivity. Switching tracks now, French President Emmanuel Macron is set to host an emergency summit on Monday with key European leaders to discuss the Ukraine war. This comes after the United States officials suggested Europe may be left out of any talks on ending the conflict. Attendees will be including the UK Prime Minister Starmer, as well as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and also Washington's recent moves, including a call between the President of the United States and the leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, that has really raised concerns as far as the allies in Europe are concerned. So the meeting aims to shape Europe's response to the evolving stance that the United States is taking now on Ukraine.
Le président de la République réunira les principaux pays européens
demain
pour
une
discussion
portant,
pour des discussions portant sur la sécurité européenne. Mais ce sont des discussions qui n'ont pas attendu, si je puis dire, ni ce week-end, ni les déclarations des uns et des autres, puisque je vous dis que mercredi dernier encore, les Européens étaient à Paris pour aborder tous ces sujets.
Mais là, je comprends pas. C'est une réunion très...
And UK Prime Minister Starmer has said that he's ready and willing to put UK troops on the ground in Ukraine to help guarantee its security as part of, this is going to be part of that peace deal. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Starmer has said securing a lasting peace in Ukraine was essential if we are to deter Putin from further aggression in the future. Before attending that emergency summit with European leaders in Paris on Monday, he also went on to say that he was prepared to contribute to security guarantees to Ukraine by putting their own troops on the ground if necessary. To know more on this, we have Spencer Critchley, journalist and author, joining us from California. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Well, the UK Prime Minister will be sending troops on the ground at a time when the United States is attempting to put an end to the war. What does this really, indicate in terms of how the United States is going to perceive this move?
It's just so disturbing to me. Donald Trump, in his second administration, is busy dismantling democracy here at home in the United States, at the same time as he's dismantling our alliances across the world, including our most important alliances with NATO and with Britain and the European Union. It's, aside from the moral questions, which should be all too obvious, and it's so disappointing that they're not top of mind for virtually all Americans, there's the pragmatic value of morality. This is something I often emphasize when I talk about international relations. There's this myth that you can be a real politician where you're just focused on economic issues and your, power and your own nation's political self-interest. And ultimately, aside from the moral questions, I just think it's stupid and self-defeating. The United States is the most powerful country in the history of the world, not just because it has the biggest economy or the largest military. That'll only get us so far. It's because people know that for the most part, they can trust the United States to at least try to do the right thing. We don't always get it right, but the United States has a good reputation for actually having values that it tries to live by. And Donald Trump is reducing us to the level of gangster thugs like Vladimir Putin, for example, you know, who he is eager to negotiate with, and his version of negotiation appears to be surrender by announcing in advance that his administration thinks the Russian position on their invasion and deliberate targeting of Ukrainians and civilians and kidnapping of children, et cetera, they think they're starting with the Russian position, announcing that they think that these marauders seem to have a good position that they apparently will take to the Ukrainians. It's as I say, it's both immoral, but also suicidally stupid, in my opinion. And I'm sorry that I'm speaking in such strong language, but I honestly think these times call for it.
Right, Spencer, of course, you know, what Summer is really trying to do here is play a bridge between Europe and the United States. So, of course, UK, saying that they can really play that very crucial role and saying that Europe and America must continue to work closely together, believing that this is a unique opportunity in order to kind of help, bring this war to an end. Thank you so much, Spencer, for joining us on the broadcast. Israel's Prime Minister has said that he's working to make United States President Donald Trump's plan to remove and resettle Gaza's population a reality. Benjamin Netanyahu said that he was cooperating with the United States on a common strategy for the Palestinian territory after meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem on Sunday. The talks come after U.S. President Donald Trump proposed a U.S. takeover as far as the takeover of Gaza and the removal of 2 million Palestinians there to neighboring countries.
The president's also been very bold about his view of what the future for Gaza should be. Not the same tired ideas of the past, but something that's bold and something that frankly took courage and vision in order to outline. And it may have shocked and surprised many, but what cannot continue is the same cycle where we repeat over and over again and wind up in the exact same place. Related to that, the president's been very clear. Hamas cannot continue as a military or government force. And frankly, as long as it stands as a force that can govern or as a force that can administer or as a force that can threaten by use of violence, peace becomes impossible. They must be eliminated. It must be eradicated.
The Secretary and I also discussed how the many international institutions have been hijacked and turned into anti-American and anti-Israeli forums. We see that in the UN General Assembly, in the UN Human Rights Commission, where anti-Americanism is rampant, and more resolutions are passed about Israel than the rest of the world combined. And we see it especially in the lawfare that is being waged against America and Israel at the ICC, the ICJ, and elsewhere. The ICC has outrageously libeled Israel and issued arrest warrants based on utter lies. Like America, Israel is not subject to the jurisdiction of the ICC and does not accept the court's authority. Israel commends President Trump and his administration for restoring his executive order against the ICC and for moving quickly to sanction ICC officials.
And in other news, the widow of late Russian opposition leader Navalny accused President Vladimir Putin of seeking to conceal the truth about his death. This is Navalny's widow, Yulia, who accused Putin of trying to cover up the true causes of his death and of erasing the memory of her late husband in a video released on the anniversary of his death. Authorities blamed Navalny's death, announced on the 16th of February last year, on natural causes, a sudden spike in blood pressure and chronic diseases. His family and allies reject that and insist that he was killed on orders from the Kremlin. These are accusations that are being made but being denied by authorities. Tens of thousands of people attended the funeral in Moscow on the 1st of March in a rare show of defiance in a country where any street rally or even single pickets often result in immediate arrests.
Даже сейчас, спустя год после его смерти, он пытается стереть имя Алексея из нашей памяти, скрыть правду об убийстве, заставить нас смириться. Но у него это не получится. Боль, которую мы чувствуем, делает нас сильнее. И этот год показал, что мы крепче, чем сами о себе думали.
In other news, strong tremors were felt in Delhi and its adjoining areas at 5:36 this morning after the Richter scale measured an earthquake of a 4 that struck the national capital. The quake's depth was just 5 kilometers, and the Delhi NCR region, many people were seen out of their homes trying to safeguard themselves from that tremor that took place at 5:36 this morning.
तो हम करीब 5:30 बजे से यहीं बैठे हैं और गाड़ी का वेट कर रहे हैं। तो जैसे ही 5:35 या 5:38 के बीच ऐसा झटका महसूस हुआ जैसे कोई ट्रेन आके अचानक ब्रेक लगे हों, तो पूरा ये आसपास का जो एरिया एकदम से हिला। तो हमारी ओर धड़कनें तेज हो गई। हमने देखा कोई ऊपर से कुछ गिर तो नहीं रहा है, कहीं कल की तरह जो हादसा हुआ है ऐसे कोई भगदड़ तो नहीं मची है। तो हम एकदम दहशत में आ गए। फिर हमने चारों तरफ देखा तो सब लोग खड़े हो गए, क्राउड, कि भाई क्या हुआ। तो फिर पता चला कि अर्थक्वेक आया, बहुत तगड़ा अर्थक्वेक आया।
अभी झटके आए थे एकदम, हम सोचो कोई ट्रेन आ रही है, लेकिन न्यूज पे देखा तो 5.36 के मतलब आए हैं। एनसीआर के अंदर भूकंप बोल रहे हैं।
हम लोग तो सोचे कि एकदम से कोई ट्रेन आई है, लेकिन जब बाद में पता लगा तो भूकंप है। फिर हमने न्यूज़ लगाई, न्यूज़ से पता लगा कि 5.36 का जो है एनसीआर दिल्ली में जो है भूकंप आया है। तो बस मैं ये करता हूँ कि भी जो है सब सुरक्षित रहें, अच्छे से रहें।
And in other news, M23 rebels allegedly backed by Rwanda have advanced into the strategic city of Bukavu in eastern Congo, meeting a little resistance from the government troops. Rebel commander claims that the group has controlled the city since midday on Sunday. Now, the Bukavu's capture follows M23's seizure of Goma in January and further eroding the authorities in the east. The government is accusing Rwanda of sending troops into Bukavu, calling it an occupation attempt, while the authorities are denying those allegations, saying it is defending itself against a militia operating alongside forces, while the rapid escalation has raised fears of a broader regional conflict. To know more on this, we have Holly McKay joining us to get us more on this. Holly, take us through what's the situation on the ground and what are the authorities really saying?
Well, it's a very stunning situation, and the speed of which M23 has been able to capture these very strategic and major cities is really deeply concerning. Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people displaced, and in the DRC, it has the most displacement of any country in the world, which in itself is a massive humanitarian crisis. And in addition to that, the fighting has just escalated in and around these very major cities, with the potential for it to escalate even more should M23 be able to capture more places. And sort of in addition to that, the humanitarian crisis and the number of violence, sort of particularly against women and children, is another cause for really deep concern as to what's happening in the DRC as this continues.
Right. Thank you so much, Holly, for joining us with those details. And of course, very concerning situation when it comes to the M23 rebels that have advanced into strategic cities towards the east of Congo. Moving on now, let's just also get to External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who met with Bangladesh's Foreign Affairs Advisor on Sunday to discuss bilateral relations between the two countries. Well, he met with Foreign Affairs Advisor Mohammad Tawheed Hussain of the interim government of Bangladesh. The conversation was focused on bilateral relationships. That is what the minister has put out in a message on social media site X. The Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation includes 7 countries. That's Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Bhutan, as well as Nepal. Bangladesh will be the next chair of the summit, which is coming up, which will be taking place in Bangkok from the 2nd of April to the 4th of April this year. Well, the officials who have met on the matter, the sidelines of the Indian Ocean Conference in Oman, is part of the efforts to prevent further strains in bilateral ties between India and Bangladesh. And with that, we're slipping into a very short break. Back on the other side with a whole lot more. Welcome back. Now let's get to the very latest of that plane with 112 Indians who were deported from the United States for illegally residing in the country landed in Amritsar at about 10 o'clock at night on Sunday. The third such arrival in a span of just 10 days. Do remember, 104 Indians were deported from the United States at first, and then followed by a plane full of 119. And now 112 passengers on board that plane landed in Amritsar. According to sources, the flight C-17 Globemaster aircraft of the United States Air Force landed at the Amritsar International, this is the international airport. Of the total deportees, 31 are from Punjab, 44 from Haryana, 33 from Gujarat, 2 from Uttar Pradesh, 1 each from Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. While the families of some of them reached the airport to receive them, they have now been sent to their hometowns through buses, those facilities that have been made. Now, of course, they are going to be looking into the completion of all kind of formalities and also arrangements that had been made in order to transport the deportees back to their destinations. Now, the ruling party, the BJP, slammed the former Congress-led administration after the Elon Musk-led the United States Department of Government Efficiency cancelled a grant that had been set aside for voter turnout in India. The BJP said the action demonstrated that previous governments encouraged forces that were against the interests of the nation to infiltrate Indian institutions. Amit Malviya, the BJP's head of IT and social media, said that the Election Commission has agreements with the US aid-funded groups and that are under investigation under Trump. The United States Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, has cancelled that 21 million US taxpayer-funded grant under former President Joe Biden's administration meant to influence voter turnout in India.
The United States Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, led by Elon Musk, has cancelled a $21 million US taxpayer-funded grant under former President Joe Biden's administration meant to influence voter turnout in India. In its announcement, DOGE highlighted that the $21 million was part of a larger $486 million budget allocated to the Consortium for Elections and Political Processes Strengthening. The sweeping cancellation, Mr. Musk's department stated, were part of efforts to improve government efficiency and ensure taxpayer dollars were not being spent on questionable overseas political activities. The BJP termed the now cancelled funding external interference in India's electoral process. BJP spokesperson Amit Malviya alleged systematic infiltration of Indian institutions by foreign forces, particularly targeting billionaire investor and philanthropist George Soros and his alleged network of global influence through his Open Society Foundation. He also flagged the controversial 2012 Memorandum of Understanding signed between the Election Commission of India and the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, an organization linked to Mr. Soros's Open Society Foundation, which is primarily funded by US aid, the American federal body that oversees foreign aid and is facing massive budget cuts under Donald Trump's presidency. The decision comes just days after President Donald Trump met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where the two leaders discussed strengthening US-India relations and ties in various sectors. However, the cancellation of the voter turnout funding was notably absent from any official statement or press conferences following their meeting. Other significant aid cuts announced by DOGE include $10 million for voluntary medical male circumcision in Mozambique, $14 million for social cohesion initiatives in Mali, $1.5 million for voter confidence programs in Liberia, and $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Governance and transparency projects were also affected, with $32 million for the Prague Civil Society Center and $20 million for fiscal federalism in Nepal among those terminated.
Thank you, Ghazali, for getting us all those details. And now, switching tracks, the billionaire Elon Musk has said that his AI's chatbot and ChatGPT challenger, Grok 3, would be released with a live demo that's going to be taking place at 8 p.m. Pacific time earlier this week. Of course, we do know this is going to be taking place today, but Musk had said that Grok 3 was in the final stages of development and would be released in a matter of a week or two, but now it's going to be released today. Now let's just get you the latest as far as the 2024-25 FIS Frisky World Cup season ended with a historic moment. That's taken place as Zhu Atkin and Li Fangshu shared the women's half-pipe crystal globe. Li secured her first World Cup victory, edging Atkin into second place. And of course, meanwhile, Alex Ferreira continued his dominance, winning back-to-back crystal globes and securing the third of his career. And it was double Olympic champion Gu, who won 3 of the 5 World Cups this season, missed the final 2 events. Atkin and Li finished 5 points ahead of Gu, becoming the first athletes to share the prestigious season title.